Recently, Bill Maher had Seth MacFarlane on Club Random. I don't watch the show, and so I don't know what it typically consists of, but there's a viral clip in which they're arguing over COVID-19, and Bill's style, if you will, has genuinely surprised me.
Some of the best medical advice I've gotten has not been from doctors, and doctors are very often wrong.
The first thing we're hearing from Bill is that doctors are very often wrong. This is, of course, true, but it doesn't render the average Joe on the streets as an equal, which is something that Seth points out.
And there's a vast history of showing how wrong they are, and have been about everything.
But to be a doctor in the first place just requires a certain amount of, like, you're going into it knowing that, and that's, by the way, that's why they consult with each other. That's why they call their colleagues. There's a lot of guesswork. But it's educated guesswork.
Yes.
If you're not a doctor, your guess is maybe not going to be as educated as someone who is.
Now, whether or not you agree with either of them is beyond the point, and this goes for the whole video. What we're focusing on is how they respond to one another. And so, let's keep track of the dialectic. Bill has said that doctors often get things wrong, and Seth has responded by saying that while this is true, it's still the case that doctors are the best people to make these decisions.
But then why are doctors wrong about so much?
Well, they're right about a lot too.
But very often people who aren't doctors have been righter about things.
I wonder, what's this meant to prove? Is it that epidemiologists are equivalent to the average citizen when it comes to making educated guesses about new and unprecedented viral threats?
Like what would be an example of that?
I would think this country did not allow for natural immunity to be considered, and I know this is a subject dear to your heart.
Yes.
Like, even if you had the disease, you still had to get a vaccine. That's powerful, stupid. They don't do that in Europe.
I think they do that here. There's mandatory vaccination in schools.
Right, but if you already had the disease, you have natural immunity.
Okay. Bill began by saying that doctors make mistakes, and when Seth responded by saying this in no way equates medical professionals with the average person, Bill moved on. Indeed, instead of graciously admitting, "You got me, Seth, let's stick to the pros," instead of consulting every Tom, Dick, and Harry, what does Bill do? He leaps to a brand new sparkly claim, namely that once you get COVID, you are immunized.
If you already had the disease, you have natural immunity. We didn't seem to believe in that.
That was
here.
debunked, though. I mean, that's
not debunked.
Don't you know people who've had COVID 4 or 5 times? I do. That's not natural immunity. There's no immunity there. You've had COVID 5 times.
Probably because you had too many vaccines.
Right. Back to the dialectic. Bill claimed that once you've had COVID, you can't have it again. You're immune. And to deal with Seth calmly pointing out that this is demonstrably false, Bill has said that the reason people have gotten COVID several times is because they've had too many vaccines.
Probably because you had too many vaccines.
What? You see what I mean? This is a disaster.
I didn't have COVID.
Did the vaccine gave you COVID?
Well, that's certainly nothing unscientific about the fact that the vaccine, which does weaken you in order to strengthen you.
So as do all vaccines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why so many people like me got it, did not have it while the thing was raging, and I was taking zero precautions because I was never that afraid of it.
But that's anecdotal. Like, I've had every booster there is to
anecdotal
have.
That's
What are we watching? To respond to Seth asking if he really thinks the vaccine caused him to catch the actual virus, Bill has given us the correlation between him only catching the disease after he received the jab. And boom, just like that, Seth spells out that this is nothing more than an anecdote.
Yeah.
And I have never had COVID. I get a flu shot once a year. I haven't had the flu in 20 years.
Right. Well, I haven't either, and I don't get a flu shot.
Okay, so this is all anecdotal.
You see that bottle next to Bill. How much of it do you think he's had? He's relied on a personal anecdote rather than data to make a point, and in response to Seth illustrating the absurdity of this by applying the logic to the flu, Bill hasn't said, "Good point, I will stop relying on this basic fallacy." No, he's given an opposing personal anecdote to Seth, which simply highlights Seth's point.
But you know the difference between anecdotal and statistical.
I do.
And statistically, you still have a 90% better chance of not being hospitalized, not dying if you're vaccinated.
Okay, but that's assuming all people are alike, and that is one of the giant fallacies in your way of thinking. We are not all alike.
Whoa, hold the phone. Seth never said that we're all a cookie-cutter copy of each other. He's speaking broadly to make the point. But Bill knows this, surely.
Yes, I would recommend and have recommended the COVID vaccine for the high-risk people. Like if you're 90 or fat, get it. Absolutely. You need it. Some people don't.
But you had
Djokovic didn't need it.
But you had
Aaron Rodgers didn't need it.
But you had something like 1,900 kids who died of COVID during the pandemic.
No, I don't think that's right.
Bill confidently says that it's not correct to say that 1,900 children have died of COVID, but the statistics are more on Seth's side.
The New York...
And the thinking there is that, well, probably most kids are not going to die from COVID, so why bother with the vaccine? Because it's only going to be a few hundred kids, right?
I don't know how many kids died. That seems very high to me. I know at one point the New York Times grossly, talking about misinformation, they had to apologize. They got it completely wrong. She reported something like 900,000 children have been hospitalized, and it was like 63,000.
Okay, Seth emphasised that no children have died from the vaccine, and Bill's riposte is that there was a mistaken report on child deaths. Seriously, what's in his drink?
So maybe those facts should be checked.
Papers can get it wrong, and they print retractions, and you know this.
But also...
Back to the exchange, notice that Bill is simply moving on to the next point as soon as Seth offers an objection.
It takes 7 million people worldwide. 7 million people worldwide who died from COVID. Like, if even just a fraction of that is, and it's probably a larger fraction who died of COVID than who died with COVID. If even just a fraction of that is, that's still a lot of fucking people. That's a lot of fucking people.
Yes, but what? Okay,
that's
some people...
7 million people.
Things are... And you cannot prevent that.
Because I don't watch Bill, I genuinely don't know the answer to this question. But is he always like this? I thought that he was a smart dude. Is it just this topic that he's like this with? Seth has rightfully pointed out that even if we pin a tiny percentage of deaths on COVID, we're still facing a massive toll of player deletions. And Bill's comeback is that we can't prevent this.
You can, though. I mean, you can prevent...
At what cost?
But what's the cost of getting a vaccine? The fact
that you don't even have a clue what's the cost of getting a vaccine, that you don't know the answer to that?
Seth asked a simple question.
But what's the cost of getting a vaccine?
And Bill mocked him for not knowing the cost.
The fact that everybody came out and said, if you get the vaccine, you cannot get the disease, and then of course that was wrong. And if you get the vaccine, you can't transmit it.
But
and
they were learning
right
alongside us.
I understand.
They're not. You just said yourself, doctors are often wrong. They are, especially when they're researching a brand new disease.
And I am not blaming them for it. I'm just saying that's why there shouldn't be the science. There's no the in science. That's what you want. You want just to be the one true opinion.
That's not...
Jesus, let your guest speak, Bill, for crying out loud. Now, you might not have heard Seth over Bill there, but Seth correctly noted that the strength of science is that it evolves according to new data. This is a fact that Bill himself wields when dealing with the pseudoscience of creationism, but when it's applied to his own crap, he's having none of it.
That vaccines have ill effects on some people.
They do, of course they
anecdotally.
Do. But statistically, it's here and it's here. It's like it's people. How many? 7 million people died of COVID. How many people died from the vaccine? Probably a few.
But
I don't know what the number is, but I know it's not 7 million.
If we were more judicious about who needed it versus who it might hurt, which would not be the blanket policy of just everybody, one size fits all, then perhaps we could take down the damages from the vaccine that happened.
But then why vaccinate for anything?
And then take down the...
Why vaccinate for measles? Why not? Why vaccinate for mumps or rubella, pertussis? Why vaccinate for any of those things? Because somebody might get hurt by the vaccine. Why do those vaccines? Because COVID is newer?
Well, COVID is newer.
Yes, it's new, but is that the only reason? I mean, this was, by the time you got the vaccine, I don't know if you had it, but by the time I got the vaccine, this was the most tested vaccine in the history of vaccination.
Yes, I had it.
Because
I had to get
so many people by that point had had it. It's like by the time it got into my arm, it's like, all right, I think I'm going to be okay.
Okay, well, just so you know, I took one for the team.
What a hero. Well done. And to be clear, this compliment goes to Seth for having to deal with Bill.